Okay. And we ran into an error. Okay, if you encountered this error, if 68%, fine. All right, guys. So before we begin, doubts, confusion, question. If there's anything which is not clear to you, anything that you would like me to repeat, please let me know. Okay. So let me begin by talking about there was this migration option that I wanted to show you yesterday. So what happens is that when you pick a VM, and if you would like to migrate a VM, you click on the migrate option, and basically you have got 4 options. So the first option over here basically says that if you want to change ESXi only. So the first option is only changing the ESXi for you. The second option is it is only changing the storage for you. Okay. The third option that we have is basically changing the storage and the ESXi both. It is changing both the options for you. Okay. And that would be possible when you have basically a enhanced link mode, wherein you have 2 vCenters, wherein you can see from single pane of glass. And if you want to migrate a VM from here to here, then you can use the third option. And this will basically change your ESXi and the storage. It is going to change both of them for you. Okay, so let me show you the third option basically on how it works and how we can get that going. So what you would have to do is that you choose the third option. Let me power on the VM. It does not have to be powered off. You can power it on and then migrate it. So yeah, okay. So I'll come to this VM. I'll come to migrate. I'll choose the third option. Next, I will choose my ESXi over here. It is currently on ESXi 2. I'm taking it to ESXi 1. Next, I'll choose a different data store where the machine is not residing. You choose the folder, hit next, choose the network card, always choose the high priority and finish. Now you see that VM07 is being migrated from the first vCenter to the second vCenter. Okay, so this is basically called a cross vCenter migration, wherein if you would like to migrate one virtual machine from one vCenter to another vCenter, then this is something that can be done. Again, this can only be done when you have 2 vCenters, wherein you can see both of them together in the enhanced link mode. Okay, there is one more option. What if you're not able to see the vCenter? So let's take an example that you have this VM09 over here. I power on this machine and I want to migrate it to vCenter 03. Let's say I had a vCenter over here that I was trying to install and the installation failed. So let's say that somewhere I've got a VC03, okay? And I would like to connect to that. I would like to move this VM to VC03. This is what I would like to do, okay? So you can even do that. So for that, what you have to do is basically you need to choose this option, choose migrate, and then choose the last option, okay? Now, we need to read this. It says migrate the virtual machines to a vCenter not linked to current SSO domain. This basically means that if you have a vCenter, which is not basically part of these 2 vCenters, so this vCenter and this vCenter, they basically belong to same SSO domain. That is why we are able to see enhanced link mode, and that is why they are in the same pane of glass. For example, if you have VC03, which is in a different SSO domain. So for example, the SSO domain that you have over here, for example, is vsphere.local. Okay. And over here, for example, you have superman.local. Okay. You could have a different SSO domain altogether. Okay. Now, if you would like to migrate this VM over here, then you need to choose the fourth option. The fourth option is the one wherein you need to migrate a VM to some other vCenter. And that vCenter basically is not in the same SSO domain. Okay. For this, for this migration to work well, you need to have network connectivity. If you do not have network connectivity, then it is not going to work. It is very important that network connectivity should be good, robust, should be reliable, because when you do a vMotion, there is a network prerequisite that you have to meet. The latency has to be less than 100 milliseconds round trip time. So all those things you have to take into consideration. If that is working fine, then you would be able to migrate it over here. I do not have a vCenter. I was trying to install it and then it somehow it failed. So all that you have to do is choose the fourth option, hit next, and enter the details of the vCenter that you have. Okay, then you will hit the login button. It will basically take the credentials. It will try validating it. And once the validation goes okay, then you basically need to choose the same settings over here. That is, choose the ESXi, storage, network, vMotion priority will always be high, and then you hit finish and the migration would happen. Okay, so those are the options available when you're trying to migrate a virtual machine. Okay, so always be clear that these options, 4 of them, basically help you from where to where you're trying to migrate. If you have any questions on what you see on the screen, any of the 4 options, if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, now let me talk about performance. Okay, let me talk about how basically you would look at performance. And what are the things that that are important when we talk from the performance point of view? So basically, if I talk about from performance, there are 2 things that you can look at. Okay, the first thing is that you can look at the performance from UI, that is from the GUI based, and the second option is that you can look at it from the command line. These are the only 2 options available. Basically, if I have to categorize in UI, the option available is performance charts. Okay, so there's something called as performance charts, and you have to look at basically the graphs from here to understand that how the objects are behaving. You could also have a third-party tool. There are many third-party tools available. You can even use those to monitor that how your environment is behaving. So VMware has a very good tool, which is basically called VROPS. Okay, it is now called ARIA operations. Okay, it's called ARIA operations. Now they've changed the name. So you could use a third-party tool, something like SolarWinds, if you would like to use that, or there are many other tools available. Or if you want to use a VMware monitoring tool native, then you basically need to go with this one. Okay, that is from the UI point of view. Now, VROPS as a tool is a very powerful tool. So what you do in VROPS is basically you have something called as management packs. Okay, so this VROPS tool can basically can check the performance of your network switch. It can basically check the performance of your SAN. It can check the performance of your servers. It can check the performance of operating system. It can check the performance of applications. It can check the performance of VM. It can check the performance of other VMware products. So it can do a lot of things. I mean, it is a very powerful tool that you have. And all that you have to do is basically you have to add these management packs. So you keep adding the management packs to this VROPS. So it gets an understanding that which object it has to monitor now, and it is able to recognize all the matrices over there. So once you add these management packs, I mean, it can do a lot of things for you, right from the application, operating system, VM, ESXi, physical environment. It can do a lot of things for you. Okay. So again, this is not a free tool. You have to pay for it. And VMware gives a dedicated training for 3 days for this tool. So if you would like to really know about this tool, they have a dedicated training and you have to pay for this tool. And then you have to deploy it in a specific architecture. And then you can basically start using it. Now, this is the first option for VROPS. Third-party tools, you have many of them, like SolarWinds, as I mentioned. There are few other options available. Again, they are paid. They do not come for free. Okay. The only free option that we have available with us is basically performance charts. So on the vCenter, we have something called as performance charts. These performance charts are basically getting saved on the Postgres database. So when we were installing vCenter, you remember it has a Postgres database. Okay, so this is the Postgres database where all the performance charts are getting saved, and from here it basically requests for the charts whenever you want to look at the historical data to fetch it. Okay, command line I will talk about it later. First, let me talk more about from the UI point of view. Now, when I talk about performance charts, there is basically a setting that is, there's something called as I should say metric collection settings. Think about it, there's something called as a metric collection. And these metric collections basically start from 1, 2, 3, 4. There are basically four settings available. Okay, fourth is being the highest. Now, VMware says that um, the higher the setting that you have, more graphs will be available for you. Okay, more graphs will be available for you. Now, all these graphs are getting saved in your database. Okay, the more the graphs that you have, higher will be the database size. Okay, because you're saving everything in database. So if you save a 1 GB file in your database as compared to a 100 GB file. So if you save a 100 GB file in your database, of course your database will be 100 GB. Okay, you have to give more space to your data to your database. So a fourth level setting is something, wherein it captures everything, all the graphs, everything it is going to capture. But again, that would have a lot of toll on your database. Your database again would be, having a lot of high utilization. It will be always, trying to do indexing and all that. So it will be a lot of pressure on the database. Okay. VMware says that in your environment, basically you should have 3 and 4 settings only during troubleshooting. So when you are trying to troubleshoot something, right, and you only want to have the charts basically for, let's say, 2 hours, okay, you want to enable 3 and 4 charts basically only for 2 hours to verify that what are things working. You want to capture the performance charts. You want to capture the numbers to see that when that problem is hitting, what is the graph behaving, where is the problem. If you want to analyze that, then VMware says that you should only enable these charts 3 and 4 only during the troubleshooting for a limited number of time. Okay, this should be for a limited time only. It should not be like that, you apply it and then you forget it. If you do that, your database is going to grow very quickly. Okay. VMware says that in your environment, you should always have second, setting enabled. By default, what would happen is that this is enabled by default. This is enabled by default. So what you can do is you can apply this setting. Okay. When you apply this setting, it will capture a few more graphs. So what happens is, let's say that there are 100 graphs on VMware, which you can capture. So all these 100 graphs are basically categorized. So you would find some of the graphs which are available in 1, you would find some are available in 2, you would find some are 3, and you would find some in 4. Okay. Now graphs have a different category. I mean, when I say graphs, they are basically, they have a real-time data. Okay, and then they have a historical data. Okay, so real-time data is only for 15 minutes. For last 15 minutes, you can only see the real-time data. After that, it becomes historical data. Okay, now real data, you can see everything. So for example, if you want to see anything for disk, network, storage, anything that you want to see real time for only 15 minutes, you have every counter, every graph will be available for you. Okay. The question comes if you want to see historical data. Okay. If you want to see data which is older than 15 minutes, then these settings come into play. So the higher the setting that you will have, more historical data you will be able to see. The less setting that you have, the less number that you have, the less historical data you will be able to see. Okay. Again, real time is basically for everything you would be able to see, but historical data is something that depends on which setting that you have applied. Okay. Now, from where do we apply this setting? Let me talk about that. So to apply the setting, you basically have to go at the vCenter level. When you go at the vCenter level, you go to general over here, hit the edit button, and you see this statistics level. Now, these levels that you see over here, basically they define performance charts, what to be captured. They basically defined what has to be captured. This is depending on these numbers. Okay. So if you change the number basically from level 4, okay, look at this estimate size. So if when you have it on 1, you are basically saying that, in my example, for example, I've got 50 ESXis and I've got 2000 virtual machines. Okay. If this is your environment, and basically if you are going with level 1, this is the database size that will be. Now, if you say that you want to capture everything and if you want to keep it on level 4, and if you make everything to level 4, then look at the database size. This has gone to 200 GB. 200 GB of a database. I mean, that's huge. Okay, this is very huge. And then you would need to have a dedicated, Postgres database guy, who would have to maintain the database, do the indexing, probably remove the old data, because what would happen is your database will become heavy, and as a result, your vCenter might start responding slowly to it. So keeping all the levels to 4, this is something only suggested only during the troubleshooting time, and again for limited capacity. Generally, in your environment, you should keep it to 2. Okay, my suggestion would be that in your environment, keep everything to level 2. Okay, let level 2 capture everything for you. Okay, so what you do is you choose level 2 and you hit the save button. Okay, now what would happen is you see that everything is basically getting captured at level 2 over here. Okay, now this is the setting that you've only defined right now. So this is what you've defined is that in my environment, I want everything to be logged at level 2. Level 2 basically means you are capturing good amount of details, but you're not capturing everything. Okay. Now, when you look at a graph, a real-time graph is only basically for 15 minutes. Okay. And then if you say that you want to look at the historical data, you want to see that for last 1 week, how was my ESXi CPU utilization was. You want to see how much was the RAM utilization for the ESXi. Okay. When you look at the data for last 1 day, you will basically see intervals of 5 minutes. So whatever data comes up, I mean, if you want to see that for the last day, how was my ESXi CPU behaving? So it will show you at every 5 minutes. Okay. If you look at the last week's data, if you see that, if you say that you want to know that over the last week, how was my ESXi behaving, the CPU utilization, then the result that you will be seeing will be basically for every 30 minutes. It will be a consolidation report for every 30 minutes. For a month, it will be every 2 hours. And if you look at it for a year, it will be for every day. Because when you're looking at a historical data for a year, it cannot show you every minute. It cannot show you every second. So it has to be every day. Basically, it will be a consolidation and average of what you see at a daily level. Okay. Now, when I talk about graphs is something that you will always find under monitor. Okay. This is something that you will always find under monitor, and you would not find it for vCenter. Okay. You would start basically a graph from the data center level. So when you come at the data center level, you see the performance graphs over here. So you basically have 2 categories. There's something called as overview and there is something called as advanced. Okay. As the word says, overview means only giving you an overview. At a high level, at a 30,000 feet, okay, it will basically show you what you have in your environment. Okay, this is a very high level. Advanced is basically a deep dive. Advanced basically shows you a lot of details, a lot of counters, what you want to see. So it is a very in-depth analysis of your object, whichever object you are choosing. So object right now you have selected data center as the Bangalore data center. This is your object that you have chosen right now. So against this object, you will currently see the graphs right now. Okay. So if you choose, for example, a virtual machine, the graphs that you will see over here will be very different as compared to a data center. Every object has its own graph. Okay. What you see for virtual machine, you would not see for the data center level. Okay, at a virtual machine level, you would see CPU, RAM utilization, you would see disk utilization, and you would see all those sort of numbers. This is something that you might not see for the Bangalore data center. Here, the numbers, here the graphs will be different altogether. Okay, so it depends on which object that you're choosing. So over here, if you go to the overview, so basically over here, it is showing you that, how much is the utilization at the data, it is at the cluster level. So it is basically showing you prod and then showing you that how much the prod is utilizing because I only have one data center. Okay, here you see at the cluster level. Here it would show you basically for the data store level. Again, my machine is always off. But if you look at in your environment, you would see that, you should have a good amount of graphs over here. Again, you would see what is the space utilization, how much is being used by what. This is something that you will get to see at a per data store level. Okay. Same would be applicable on advanced. When you go to advanced over here, when you see virtual machine options, you go to chart options and it would show you what you want to see. So here it is basically showing you that how many vMotions were done, how many clones, how many VMs got created, VMs got rebooted, and you would see all these numbers over here. Okay, so depending on the option that you have, you can basically choose, you can choose the last day, last week, last month, last year, or if you want to see a custom interval, you want to see very something specific only for an hour or two, in the last week, you can even do that. You can choose a custom and you can specify the date and time, it will show you. Okay, so you have basically options of a line graph, or if you want to do a stack graph, it can even show you like this, or if you want, it can show you like this also at a line graph as well. Okay. Again, these numbers that you select over here, they play a vital role in deciding on what you see, what you don't see. Okay. These numbers play a very vital role in seeing what you can see, what you cannot see. Okay. Always, in my suggestion, keep 2 over here in your production environment. Okay. 3 and 4 should always be enabled during the troubleshooting time when only VMware says. Do not apply it on your own. Now, when I choose the cluster, again in cluster, when I go to the monitor tab, again, I would have performance, overview, and advanced. Now you're looking at the cluster level. At a cluster level, you would see a few more things over here. How much is the utilization? Uh, how much is being utilized? You can look at it for last day. It would show you an overview if you want to see for ESXi, which ESXi is using basically what. So you would get to know about this. Okay. In advance, when you go, then you have some options over here. So this is basically you're looking at for the CPU. So for the CPU, if you want to look at it, it will show you for last day, last week, last month, again, what the options are. And it will show you that what the usage has been. It will show you that in which percentage it is basically showing you what is the usage in megahertz, what is the total CPU that you have, what is the usage. So it will show you basically all the details, and from here you can capture and analyze and see that how much your utilization has been, how much your CPU utilization at a cluster level has been. Okay. Again, now when you come to the ESXi level, here you would see a lot of details. So when you go to the monitor tab, and here when you go to the overview, here it would show you a lot of details. At an ESXi level, you basically have something called as a real time. Now in real time, as I mentioned, it is only available for 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes, your data would go away. Okay. Now at an overview level, again, this is a 30,000 feet, high feet options. And you would see that, which is the memory, where it is getting utilized, who is using CPU memory and what not. It will show you everything over here. Now this is overview. If you want to know something more about memory utilization, how the memory was reclaimed, where the ballooning was done, what we spoke about, you would get to know about it. Was there any swapping done? It was very minimal, only of 2 MB, so nothing major, of memory reclamation done. You want to see the network adapters, how the utilization has been, how many network packets being sent, all these things it would show you over here. Same applicable for disk, how much the utilization has been, or how much is read write IOPS. Again, but you have to look at it, this is kbps. So you would have to do the calculation to understand that how exactly or the utilization has been. And here you can look at the virtual machines, that how much virtual machine is utilizing and all that. Okay. Again, this is an overview. When you look at the advanced options, Here it gives you the real options. So basically, when you look at the CPU, you see so many charts are available. Okay, co-stop, scheduled, on-demand, latency, readiness, and these are basically called counters. You see the word over here? These are basically called counters. Okay. So under CPU, you have a lot of counters. Similarly, under memory, network, power, storage, you would have a different counters over here. Every counter tells you something different. Okay, every counter has a different meaning. No two counters are same. Okay, never understand that these counters are basically telling you the same thing. No, they are not basically telling you the same thing. Performance is a very huge topic to understand, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of with time, the experience that you keep getting, you keep understanding what it is. So if I talk about this co-stop, the first one, co-stop basically means that are you giving extra vCPUs to your virtual machine? So what happens is whenever there is an performance problem on a virtual machine, folks generally say, give more CPU, give more RAM to the virtual machine and everything would work fine. Okay. In VMware environment, the things are a little different. If you give unwanted CPUs to a virtual machine, your VM will perform slow. The performance of the virtual machine will come down. Never give too many vCPUs to a virtual machine, your performance will come down. Same is applicable with RAM. Never give too much of RAM to a VM. If it is not using it, the performance will come down. So for example, if you look at a VM and the VM has a utilization, I'm just giving an example, an average utilization of CPU 30%. Okay, you go in the operating system, or you have some tool, and basically with that tool you check that the OS utilization is basically 30%, and you see that this VM has basically 6 vCPUs. There is no point of giving 6 vCPUs to this virtual machine. You can basically bring it down to 4. When you bring it down to 4, the CPU utilization will be around 50%. That is absolutely fine. You can let the CPU utilization be at 50%, but not use 6 vCPUs. You have to use 4 vCPUs. Okay. Now, think about it. What happens is that when you create a virtual machine, let me explain in such a way. When you create a VM, okay, let's say this is a VM that you have, and you give 4 vCPUs. Okay, this is a VM, and you've given 4 vCPUs. Every vCPU is getting mapped with a P core. Okay, on the physical machine, you have a P core, it is getting mapped to it. Okay, this mapping is automatically done by CPU scheduler. You do not have to worry about it. This is something that CPU scheduler will automatically do that for you. Okay, but always remember, giving more CPUs, giving more vCPUs to a virtual machine, think about it like a bicycle. Okay, so let me draw a very horrible diagram. Let's say that you have a bicycle. Okay, how do I draw a bicycle? Okay, let's say that this is a bicycle that you have, and the vCPUs are like wheels, are like tires. Okay, think about it as tires. The more vCPUs that you have on a VM is equals to having more wheels on a bicycle. Okay, the more wheels that you have on a bicycle, the more effort will be required to ride that bicycle. Okay, if you have to ride a bicycle with 8 tires as compared to a bicycle with 2 tires, I mean, you will be comfortable riding a bicycle with 2 tires and one as compared with 8 tires. So think about it that every vCPU that you add to a VM, think about it as a tire that you're adding it to a bicycle. If you have 8 tires on a bicycle, and if you have to even ride 100 meters, or if you have to even ride 5 meters, all those 8 tires have to move, and then only you can ride the bicycle. Same would be applicable with a virtual machine as well. If you give a lot of vCPUs to the virtual machine, CPU scheduler has to basically map all of them to physical vCPUs. Every one of them has to be mapped to a physical VPU, and you have to also understand what is the utilization at the physical core level. The core might be utilized a lot, it might not be utilized a lot. I mean, and these things also affect the design. When you're designing VMware environment, basically you have to look at consolidation ratio. Consolidation ratio basically means how many vCPUs are going to run on a physical core. This is what a consolidation ratio is. Generally, you run it 4:1, or you generally run 6:1. That is, on 6 vCPUs will be running on one physical core. That is what you keep. Okay. My point in a nutshell is that if you have a VM, look at the CPU utilization to understand that how much CPU is being utilized on a virtual machine. If you think that the CPU utilization is only 30%, 40%, and the VM has, for example, 4 vCPUs, bring it down to 2. You don't need 4 vCPUs on a virtual machine, okay? Giving more vCPUs on a virtual machine is never going to help you with the performance, okay? It is not a physical environment wherein you give your desktop, you give your laptop a lot of RAM, a lot of CPU, and then you think that your machine is going to now just fly. That's not going to happen. In VMware, things are a little different. Unwanted CPUs, unwanted RAM to a virtual machine will bring down the performance. Always remember that, okay? So coming back to the point again, okay. So here you have co-stop. Co-stop is a value that basically tells you that do you have unwanted vCPUs on a virtual machine, okay? It basically tells you that if this value is more than 3, if this value is more than 3 milliseconds, then it means that you have unwanted vCPUs on a virtual machine, okay? All these counters are in a lot of depth. If you start studying about it, it will take at least a month for you to understand that, you know, what these counters are, to basically understand that how it is helping you, okay? If you are really interested to read about these counters and you want to understand what these are, basically simply come to Google and just type co-stop VMware, okay? And you would find a lot of values. What is a co-stop? What is a high co-stop value seen? What is a co-stop value mean, right? You would find a lot of articles basically talking about what is a high co-stop value and what it is doing for you, okay? There are many um, articles out there which will basically tell you on how you can do that. So you can read these articles to basically understand that what these core stop value means and that, you know, how it is going to help you. Similarly, all these counters are again same. So you can look at this number, core stop, core utilization, demand, idle, and you can just you can Google these to understand more that what does these mean. Because if, you know, if we start talking about these, you know, every counter one by one, it'll take a lot of time for us, you know, at least a month to probably understand all these counters and, you know, to probably understand what it means over here. So you look at it, so many counters are over here. So what every counter basically means, it is basically impossible to talk about all of them. The best option is, as you encounter performance problems, okay, the best is that you do a Google search and understand what these counters basically mean, okay? So when you do a core stop at a real-time level, you hit the OK button. So it is basically showing you what is the core stop value, okay, where it is, what is the value that you see at the ESXi level. Similarly, you can see for a virtual machine level as well. So when you go to the virtual machine level, when you go to monitor, when you go to advanced, you would see real time over here. And here also you can see a core stop value. So if you see a core stop value for a virtual machine on a higher side, then it basically means you have unwanted vCPUs on that virtual machine. Okay. So this is something that, you know, you will get to know about it. So you see that the maximum has been, this is the usage, and basically it shows you about the co-stop utilization for this VM, what the utilization has been, what is the CPU utilization maximum, when did it spike. Then you can look at the historical graph as well to understand what has been the utilization for last day, last week, last month, to understand more about this. Okay, so these graphs are basically very helpful, and all this data is basically saved in the Postgres database. Okay, if you have a DBA in your company who basically is a champ when it comes to Postgres database, maybe you can ask them to log into your vCenter and have a look at the tables, and they can have a look at the columns to understand that what tables are there in the Postgres database, and they can probably refine your database a little more. They can help you with the indexing. They can take the data off, which is older than 6 months and all that. If you do not have, you can also simply log a case with VMware, and VMware can share a KB article with you, basically talking about that if you want to delete all the performance data which is older than 6 months. So how to do that? VMware would basically let you know, and you can keep doing that. Okay. If you want to keep everything to 4, I mean, there is something else you can do as well. Let's say that you want to keep everything to 4, wherein the utilization will be very high, but you say that I will only keep the data for let's say 1 month. After 1 month, I want all my data to be deleted. So again, you can have a script, or you can do some manual calculation wherein all the logging which is being done, you let this be happening on 4. Basically, you collect everything, but after 1 month, you keep deleting everything. Okay, you keep your vCenter on a pure SSD storage, which has a lot of IOPS, so that when it is doing this logging, vCenter is not getting impacted. So all these things, you would have to test in your environment. So it's not necessary that you cannot have it on 4. It's VMware's recommendation that you should only have it on 2. But if you want to keep it to 4, you can definitely do it. But just make sure that you do look after it. You do not want your data center to shoot above 200 GB or something, all that sort. So keep a look at it. So if you think that after 3 weeks the database has gone, size has gone too much, basically you can ask your Postgres guy to basically delete everything after 3 weeks, and then you can do a validation. Okay, but you have to be a little careful that you only delete the performance data and you don't delete anything else, okay, at the database level. So all these things can be looked into. So same is applicable for the virtual machine as well. So when you come to virtual machine over here, you can get to know that how much the utilization has been, how does it look like, what is the memory utilization, what is the network utilization. You can get to know everything about over here. Okay. You also have something called as a data store graph. So when you choose the data store, when you go to monitor, over here also you have graphs. And here you can see, storage IO. And if you do basically real time, it will show you that which basically VM is doing a lot of IOPS over here. So basically, if you see over here, that will show you average read latency per virtual machine disk. So you will get to know that which virtual machine is basically hitting this storage, this LUN, SAN01, which virtual machine is impacting it. So you can get to see the real time basis. You can also see for the host as well. So if you want to see that which host is basically generating a lot of latency, which is generating a lot of read IOPS, write IOPS, if you want to see all that, this is the way you can get to know about it. And then basically you can drill down at the virtual machine level to understand that which virtual machine disk is basically causing a lot of write IOPS. So right now I see over here that it is basically my vCenter, VCS02, which is basically creating a lot of IOPS. Now, if you even look at the IOPS, it is basically only taking you till 40. This is not huge. 40 IOPS is basically write IOPS is fine. The read IOPS that you see over here, it is going till basically 200. Okay. Now, all this information would not be available for you if you do a last day. Why? Because again, these numbers matter over here. Depending on these numbers, you would be able to see the data, or you would not be able to see the data. So real time is something that you will be able to see everything. Okay. Real time, basically you would see everything over here, but when it comes to historical data, then those numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4 that I was showing you, they basically come into effect. Now it depends on you that how you want to keep it. So It is your choice, but just keep in mind the database utilization that can go up. But these numbers are very important. And this is the way basically you can look at it, that, which virtual machine disk is causing it, what is not doing it, where the utilization is going high. So this is the way you can get to know about it. Very handy performance graphs. There would be no virtual machine right now. So right now, that is why we don't see it. But generally, all these graphs should be here. Okay. So you would see that which graph, which virtual machine, what is the right IOPS, read IOPS, and you will get to know everything about it. Okay. Okay, so you can look at the graph for the ESXi, you can look at the graph for the virtual machine, you can look at the graph for the storage, and they give you a very clear picture that how your utilization has been. This is from the performance point of view. Okay, if you want to look at it from the performance graphs, this is the way you can look at it, or you can also, look at the events, these co-stop values that I was talking about. You can look at these counter options, what they are, and you would have to probably Google them to understand more. They have a slight description over here as well, talking about, what this is. But again, this will be too tricky for you to understand. It'll be best, if there is a way you can probably do Google search and get some examples to understand more. So that would help you a lot. Okay. Okay. This is basically from the UI. These are the only options available if you want to look at the performance from the UI point of view. Now let me talk about from the command line point of view on how you can look at the performance from the command line. So for that, let's quickly do a SSH to the ESXi. Okay. Now when I come over here to change settings, and if I increase the font, so basically when you are trying to troubleshoot, there is this command called ESXCLI. Okay. ESXCLI is a very powerful tool now. And ESXCLI gives you a lot of things. Like I was showing you when we had to set the NMP PSP configuration. So you can do a lot of configurations, from the ESXCLI. Any changes that you want to make, any networking change, any VM that you want to kill, anything that you want to do, it can do basically a lot of things for you. Okay. This command is very helpful when it comes to troubleshooting your environment. And this can give you a lot of details and trying to see what configurations that you are running. If you want to set any configuration, this is a very helpful tool. To look at the performance of an ESXi from the command line, we basically have a tool called ESXtop. This is a command line utility we have called ESXtop. In Linux, we have a command called top, TOP top, to look at the real-time performance. ESX is basically backed by Linux kernel, and this command was basically created when we had ESX. Since then, they have been using the same command. We are now running ESXi, but again, they still call it as ESX top only. They haven't renamed it as ESXi top. Okay. Now, when you run ESX top, it basically gives you a lot of details. Okay. The first thing that you have to understand is you hit the letter H as in help. When you hit the help button, it basically shows you that what you want to see. So here it is basically showing you the counters which are available for you. Okay, so it is basically saying that if you want to look at the CPU, you hit C. If you want to hit disk adapter, you hit D. If you want to look at RAM, you hit M. And this is the way you first hit the numbers to understand. Okay. The other thing it is basically telling you is there are a lot of details over there. So for example, when I hit C over here, okay, you see so many details over here. So many processes are running over here. You look at it, so many processes are running. Now you're only concerned with the virtual machines. You're not bothered about, all these other options which are coming up. So what you can do is you can hit Shift V. Okay, you can hit Shift V, V as in virtual machine, and here it would basically show you the virtual machines view only. Okay, so all the virtual machines which are running on this ESXi, you will get to know about it. Now here, if you look at starting from the top, it basically shows you what is the time right now, it is up or not, how many processes are running, how many VMs, vCPUs, what is the CPU load. Okay, so the CPU load 0.02 basically means that it is being used at 2%. If it says 0.20, this means it is 20%. 0.30, it means 30%. And if you see 1.0, this means it is being used at 100%. This is what it means. Okay. Now, these are basically the last three iterations. The last three iterations of the CPU average load it is basically showing you. Okay. Now, on our CPU, we have a lot of cores. Okay. These are all the core numbers it is showing you. The number of cores that you have on your ESXi, it is showing load for every core. Okay. Now, utilized and util, these are basically two different parameters altogether. They are not same. Okay, these are two different values altogether talking about it. Now, over here, when you look at it, you have all these percentage use, percentage run, percentage sys, weight, and blah, blah, blah. So many options are here. Okay, if you want to see more options or if you want to remove these options, then what you do, you hit the letter F. Okay, F as in Foxtrot. When you hit the letter F, you see all these options over here. Now, if you want to see a summary of, for example, of CPU summary stats, then you hit the letter I. Okay. Now, when you hit the letter I, basically what would happen is there will be a star that will come up. This star basically means that these counters are now selected. Wherever you do not see a star, that means these options are not selected. If you want to do away with a star, then what you do is basically you hit I again. For example, I want the star to go away. So what I would do, I would hit I again. So you hit I once, it gets selected. You hit I again, it gets deselected. Okay. So whatever you want to see, you only keep those options and then you can remove the stars. Okay, and then you hit the enter key and it would show you basically those options. Now, again, these options are very different and you would have to understand that what all of them mean. What is percentage use? What is percentage run, wait, ready time, ideal? I mean, all these things you would have to basically understand that what do they mean. The best way to understand what these counters mean is basically open up Google and type ESX top Bible. Okay, just type ESX top Bible. You look at the first option, you go in it. And basically, this guide was last updated in 2008. There was this employee ZPAM. He was the one who updated it the last time. After that, no one has updated it. Okay. This guide might be of 2008, but this is a very relevant guide. Till today, it is very relevant. And here it basically gives you a lot of options that you would like to understand. Okay, here it gives you examples also. For example, it is saying, what does it mean if I see my percentage util high? And then it gives you an answers. Okay, then what is the difference between percentage util and core util? Here it gives you answers that what it means and what it you can look at it. Very descriptive guide, a very good guide. But the only problem is you read this guide, you will understand, and after a month you will forget everything. Because if you don't practice, if you're not in the touch, you would lose everything. I've read this guide at least about 10 times. But every time you read this guide, you will understand what it is. And then when you are out of touch, you would forget that what this counter means. And then when you have to troubleshoot again, you read this guide to understand, what this option was. And, then you go back again, and then you try making sense out of it again. Okay, so this is a very helpful guide. Whenever you have time, I would highly, highly recommend you to go through it. If you want to troubleshoot your performance environment of your ESXi, this is an absolutely must read that you have to go through. It gives you a lot of options, but this is overwhelming. This is too much overwhelming. There is too much of information. Don't try, grasping everything in one day. I mean, you would not be able to. This will take a lot of months. This will take at least about 3 or 4 months for you to start making sense. Okay, so take things slow. Don't be in a hurry. But again, whenever you get time, read about it. At least, if you cannot spare a lot of time, 15 minutes a week, 20 minutes a week, 30 minutes a week, just read it. Read one topic to understand what it means, percentage run, and then basically you can do a Google up and, try understanding more what it means. So just do something like this, or you come over here and type something, type something like this. And you would have few other articles as well, basically talking about, what it means and how this is going to help you. Read few articles and then you will understand that what exactly percentage run means and that, how it is going to help you, what is a ready percentage. So all these options would help you a lot. Again, performance is a very huge topic. I can only show you from where you can look at the performance, but trust me, you would have to give a lot of time if you want to understand all these counters one at a time. Again, it will take a lot of time. Do not think that everything would come to you at once. This is the core stop value number, FYI, whatever you were seeing over there. This is the number basically, and these numbers get refreshed every 5 seconds. So whatever you see over here, every 5 seconds, these numbers get refreshed. Okay. Now, if you want to capture ESX top, you can even do that. So in ESX top, when you type help over here, so you basically have something called as a batch mode. Okay. So you see this option enables batch mode. Here, basically, you can capture the data, all the data, which is basically you're seeing it over there. You can capture it in an Excel, and then you can export that Excel to a graph, and you can look at the numbers, even that. Okay. So there are a lot of settings that you can go through, and you can apply these settings that, which counters you want to see. You have to run it in the batch mode, and, how many iterations at what seconds. You can do all that, and then basically the file that you get, you can put it in a Excel file. You can change it into graphs. There are third-party tools available which will take the Excel file from you, and it would show you into a graph. It can do a lot of things for you. So all these options are available as well, and this can help you in this way. Okay. Doubts, confusions, questions, if you have any, please let me know. Okay, let me now talk about upgrade. How do we upgrade the environment and what the options are? Okay, so first you need to open up Google and you need to run or you need to type over here upgrade sequence and type VMware and type VMware 8. So if you are trying to upgrade vSphere 8 or if you're trying to upgrade it to vSphere 8, there is a sequence that you have to follow. You just cannot upgrade any component that you feel like. Okay. When we talk about VMware, VMware has a lot of components. Okay. These are all the components which are mentioned over here. So basically it is saying that you first need to upgrade this component, then this one, then this one, then you finally move on. Our option starts from here. So vCenter gets upgraded at the 9th spot. Okay. So before that, if you're using all these products, you have to upgrade them. Okay. And then you can come to the ESXi and then followed by the remaining tools that are there, which are basically ESXi, vCenter, VM tools and all that. Okay. There is one more important thing that you have to keep in mind. So this is basically talking about that in which versioning or, which product comes first. What is the sequence to upgrade? I mean, this KB article talks about that. The other thing very important you need to look at it is interoperability matrix. So you need to type VMware interoperability matrix. You need to understand which versions of VMware products work well, which don't. So for example, if you want to upgrade your vCenter, okay, you type vCenter over here. You want to upgrade it to which version? Let's say I want to upgrade it to 8.0 update 1. Okay, against which product you want to see? For example, you want to say against ESXi, and you do an interoperability. So it says that if you are running a vCenter, which is basically of version 8.0 update 1, then you can only add an ESXi, which is of version 7.0 and above. If you have a ESXi in your environment, which is 6.7 and 6.5, they cannot get added to 8.0 update 1 because it is not listed over here. If you try adding a 6.5 or 6.7 ESXi to a vCenter and 8.0 update 1, it is not going to work. So it is very important that you also, understand these, matrices over here, that interoperability, what works and what does not work. Okay. So here it is basically showing you that, it has to be for vCenter 6.7 onwards, applies to vCenter and to update manager as well. Okay. So I don't think so this ESXi you would be able to add, but you would have to check with ESXi. I mean, would it really work or would it not really work? So if you look at these, if you look at this interoperability, and if you can clearly see a green check, it is good. If you see these eyes over here, and if you have a doubt, log a case with VMware to understand that if you upgrade your ESXi, your vCenter to 8.0 update 1, would you be able to add your ESXi 6.5 or 6.7? Okay, get a confirmation from them. If you cannot log a case, then basically do a testing in your lab. So basically deploy a vCenter with 8.0 update 1 and then have a ESXi of 6.5 and 6.7 and try adding it and see if it works or not. Okay, so basically you will have to do this. So interoperability matrix, this is very important. Okay, and this update sequence is very important. Now, when we begin upgrading vCenter, when we talk about vCenter, whenever we have to upgrade, always remember vCenter is a software. vCenter, there is no hardware, there's nothing involved, it is only a software. Okay. Now, there are a couple of ways via which you can upgrade the vCenter. Basically, the only option, I would say the best option available is that you log into vCenter, port 5480 to the VAMI page, and from there you upgrade. That is the best option available. Okay. Now, before you upgrade the vCenter, there are a couple of things you should do. First, you should clone your vCenter. Take a snapshot of your vCenter. You can take a database backup of your vCenter, and you can take a vCenter settings backup as well. Okay. So there are many things that can be done. Again, you can clone the vCenter. You do not have to power it on. Okay, just clone it, keep the virtual machine as powered off. You can take a snapshot, anything goes bad, you can always revert to it. You can also take a database. So the Postgres database that you have, you can take a backup of that. You can ask the Postgres DB admin guy to take a backup of the database, then later they can restore it. Or you can take a backup of the vCenter from the settings as well. Okay, how do we do that? Let me show it to you. So basically what you have to do is you first have to log into your vCenter. So let's say I'm trying to upgrade this vCenter. Okay, so what I would do is that I would come over here and I would log into my vCenter directly. And I would log into my port 5480 to the VAMI page and I would log in. Here you need to log in as root. And when you go to backups, you have this backup option available. It says the backup is not configured. You can click on configure and here you can configure your backup. Now there are many protocols which can be used over here like FTP, FTPS, NFS, SMB, HTTP, wherever you want to keep the backup, you can do that. So how you would do that? So for example, I'll come over here, I'll come to the F drive and here I'll create a folder, let's say VC, okay? And here I have to do an NFS sharing. So I will come over here and basically share the folder over NFS. I would do a read write and allow root access. Okay. Now I will come over here and I would type NFS : / the IP of the server. So what is my IP? Basically it is 10.10.10.10.98.10 and my folder is VC. What is the username? Username is basically administrator at lab.local. I give the password, welcome@123. When do you want to take the backup? I don't want to keep any password. I want to retain all the backups, and I say create. Okay, now I have a backup. Now what do? I say backup now. If I want, I can run it at my scheduled time. That is fine. It can even run at that point of time. But I am saying that use this backup right now. Okay, you want to give a description, you could basically type test. This is saying that this is what it is going to backup. This is the amount of space that it needs. Okay, and here the backup is going to go. I say start, and my backup is going to get triggered. Okay, this has triggered my backup. So backup data is in progress. It will start backing it up, data transferred, what has been done. Okay, and it will show you, this is the way you can back up your vCenter. Now, when you come over here in VC, basically you will see your vCenter, you will see that, data is getting backed up. Okay, if things do not fall in place, then you can always come to this location and do a restore from here as well. Okay, so if you have a backup, then you can come over here and you can restore it. And this is the way you can take a backup, and you can, here it says the backup is complete. This is a manual backup. If you want, you can run it at the schedule. If you want, you can take a backup. There are many protocols available, NFS, HTTPS, and blah, blah, blah. Whichever one is comfortable with you, take that one and take a backup. This is the first kind of a backup that you can do. The second, like I mentioned, you can take a clone of this virtual machine. You can take a snapshot of this vCenter whenever you're trying to go for the upgrade. Okay. Now to upgrade the vCenter, basically you need to come over here on this update button. Okay. Now what needs to be done is that there are two ways to go about it. First, what you have to do is basically you have to download the FTP image. Now, if you have internet connectivity, so this vCenter can automatically go to the internet and it can fetch the details. Okay, it can fetch the upgrade automatically. If you do not have connectivity to the internet, then you need to download an ISO file, map this ISO file to the vCenter and check for the upgrade. This is the manual way of doing it. Okay, let me show you the manual way on how this is done. So what you have to do, go to Google and type VMware patch download. You would see the first link, VMware patch download. Click over here. You have to log in with your ID. Just create an ID if you do not have it. That is fine. Now it is basically saying that which product you want to choose. Okay, I say my vCenter. Now, which version? 8.0 update 1, this is the latest, and I say all severities and I say search. Now here I see my FTP file. You see this patch file? This is an ISO file. And this file I need to upgrade. I need to download. And this is the one which is basically going to upgrade my environment. Okay, I've already downloaded this file. Okay, so I have this file over here. Now, what do I need to do? I need to mount this file. Okay, so let me download this file first and then I'm going to mount it. So I hope I have space on my environment. Yeah, I have a lot of space. So I'll go over here. Data store browser. I'll come over here. vSphere 8 update 1. And this is basically the patch file that I have. And I'm going to download it. Okay. Now, once this file gets downloaded, what do I have to do? I have to map it to the vCenter. Okay. Now to map it to the vCenter, see, it has connectivity to the internet, so it already fetched all these details. Okay, it already fetched all these details. If you do not have connectivity, then what you can do is you can say check CD-ROM. This is something that it will also pull. So what do? I come over here, I go to summary, and I say launch remote console. Okay, I see my vCenter over here. And now what I would do is I would map my ISO file. So this ISO file, which is getting downloaded right now, I will map this file over here on the vCenter, and then I am going to go over here and check for this update again. Okay, this is what I need to do. Again, if you have internet connectivity, it is good enough. It will automatically fetch the details. It shows you the size, what it is going to upgrade and all that. It will show you all the details over here. Okay. If you want to do this, you can do that. Or if you want to have it by downloading it, you can also do that. So it shows you the release dates over here. So this is the latest one, 8.0 update 1. So this is going to upgrade it to 8.01. And basically your vCenter is going to go down. A reboot is required. It says yes. Your vCenter will get rebooted, and then it will go for it. It will do a pre-check to make sure that everything is working fine or not. So this is the first way wherein you can download it from the internet directly. The other option is basically now you come over here, you go to manage, you go to virtual machine settings, you choose the ISO, you basically choose local client, you map the ISO, and you basically choose this ISO over here. Okay, you do a mapping. Now you come over here and you say check CD-ROM, because you have connected the ISO as a CD-ROM to the virtual machine and it finds one. Okay. So if you choose an internet one, then what would happen is it would download that entire 8 GB. It has to download everything, that entire 8 GB, and then only it can trigger. Or if you already have it, just simply map it, and then you say stage and install. Stage only basically means when you are trying to install a small patch. So what you say is that, keep that patch locally on the vCenter. So you are staging it. So you're keeping the patch locally on the vCenter, and then when you hit the button install, it is basically doing a local installation of the patch because the file is there on the vCenter. That is what stage only means. When you have such a huge ISO file, you do not stage it. You basically do a stage and install, because you cannot keep an 8 GB ISO file on the vCenter locally and then you basically begin with the installation. That's not going to happen. So what you do basically stage and install. And it will basically say that you accept the terms and conditions, and you say that is fine, I accept. And then what would happen is that it is going to basically talk about that you have taken the backup of the vCenter, you have the database backup and all that. It will basically ask for that confirmation. So tomorrow, in case if things do not work well, at least you can go back. So it is here, it is saying that if you haven't taken a backup, you take a backup, and you have to put a check over here. You have to specify that, yes, I have taken a backup. Okay. And then what you do is you hit finish. Now what you have done is basically you have initiated the upgrade of the vCenter. Okay. So now it will take about 30 minutes to get completed, though it might show you that it will take 200 minutes and all that, but that's not real information. That's a fake information, I would say. Around 30 minutes or something, this will be all done. Okay. So you just need to wait for 30 minutes. And during this time, don't do any vCenter VM creation. Don't do anything at the vCenter level. For now, just wait for 30 minutes for this vCenter upgrade to get completed, and then only start doing anything else. Okay. So this is the way you basically upgrade your vCenter. Okay, so very simple way. You just have to check the interoperability, get the patch file, do a testing in the lab, see how things are. And when you have to do an upgrade, take a lot of backups. Keep everything as a backup, whatever you can think of. Take a clone, take a snapshot, take a file level backup. If you have a Postgres guy in your team, ask him to take a backup of the Postgres database and all that. So try doing everything, whatever you can to take a backup and then initiate it. The best option is, in your lab, if you have a test lab or something, try doing it once and see that, how it is going to behave. Whatever you have in your environment, the number of data stores, distributed switch, and all that, try replicating the same thing, and then try going for an test first to see that everything is going well, and then you trigger the upgrade in the production. So you've already tested it, you already have all the tools available to restore it back in case if things do not fall in place, and then you can do that. Okay. So this is how we go for the vCenter upgrade. Any questions on this so far? Okay, now let me talk about ESXi upgrade. So when I talk about ESXi upgrade, basically ESXi can be upgraded into three ways. Okay, so the first option is that you can upgrade via DCUI, then you can upgrade via command line, and then you can upgrade via lifecycle manager. Okay, these are the three options available. Now, whenever you're going for an ESXi upgrade, always remember ESXi is a hardware. Like I was saying for the vCenter is the software, but ESXi is a hardware. Okay. So for example, this is your HP DL 380 generation 9 or generation 8 or generation 10, whatever the server model is. You have to install 8.0 update 1. You have to verify that whether your hardware supports it or not. Okay, the first thing that when it comes to upgrading your ESXi is that you need to check that whether your hardware supports it or not. The second thing that you need to check is that whether your vCenter supports 8.0 update 1 or not. It is very important that whenever you're trying to upgrade your vCenter, you have to look at it that whether your ESXi will get added over there or not. Okay, these are the two biggest things that you have to look at. Whenever you are upgrading your ESXi, always put it in the maintenance mode. When you put the ESXi in the maintenance mode, there is no virtual machine running on it. You do not have to remove the data stores and all that. That is not needed. Only put it in the maintenance mode, and then you trigger the upgrade. Now, whenever you are upgrading, last point, whenever you are upgrading your ESXi, always get the ISO from your vendor. So for example, your vendor is HP. This is an HP server. This is a Dell server. This is an IBM server. This is a Fujitsu server. Never download ESXi ISO image from VMware. Always get the ISO file from your vendor, because that file will have the drivers, that file will have the firmware, and that file would have everything needed for the hardware as well. When you upgrade your ESXi, you're not only upgrading the operating system as an ESXi, you have to also look into the drivers and the firmwares. You might have an HBA card over here. You might have a network card over here. You might have a graphics card over here. Okay, you might have an iSCSI hardware card over here. You might have so many other cards on the ESXi. So whenever you are upgrading the operating system, all these cards and drivers have to be upgraded as well. You have to keep in mind that it is not only upgrading ESXi, it is also making sure that these drivers and firmwares are also upgraded. Else you will run into issues. Okay, so it is never the ESXi as an operating system which alone gets upgraded. You have to upgrade the firmwares and drivers, and all the additional cards that you have to upgrade the drivers as well. So before upgrading, check what you have on your ESXi. What all cards are there on your ESXi? Check for the latest version. How do you get the drivers? Talk to the vendors, get the drivers, get the files. You need to understand everything. Okay, and then only trigger the ESXi upgrade, because you don't want to upgrade the operating system and then do not upgrade anything else. You are bound to run into issues. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. Okay, so the first thing, if I talk about, you want to make sure that your hardware is supporting it. So how do you do that? You basically open up Google. Okay, open up Google and just type over here, VMware product compatibility guide. Not the interoperability matrix, sorry. VMware compatibility guide, the second link. And here, for example, if you have an HP server, you want to install 8.0 update 1 and your server model is 380. So here it shows you basically all the ESXis that support 8.0 update 1, all the hardwares of HP which have a DL380, do they support 8.0 update 1 or not? So here you do not see generation 9 over here. You only see generation 10, you see generation 11 over here, but you do not see generation 9. So that means if you have any generation